He resigns himself. Correct. So he cannot resign himself. No, but we recognize that obviously the mashal is limited in the realm with wealth. But even with wealth, once you get, I would assume, once you get to the top, you still have to think about it because no one stays on top. Right? In other words, if you stop thinking about it and just assume you've arrived, you lose your standing. It's true with everything in life. Right? Even once you get to the peak, you got to maintain. All right, Shabbos, say, let's begin. Beautiful, beautiful daf of us today. Today's daf is Tzadik Zayin 97, and we are picking up on Tzadik Zayin, first line, end of the first line. V'ha'amar Rabba Bar Bar Chana. So if you remember again, so we were discussing yesterday this follows. The Mishnah began with the following situation. The Mishnah was talking about a case where I cooked the entire leg of the animal with the gid hanasha inside. So we're trying to figure out, so what is the impact of that gid on the piece of meat? So the Mishnah said that if you have a thigh and you cook the piece and cook the gid hanasha inside of it, so the Mishnah said it's aser b'no sein tam, which effectively for our purposes means that if halacha l'maisa you know that the gid infused flavor into the meat, then halacha l'maisa, the meat will be aser. So we'll say, so remember again, the Mishnah, the Gemara then qualified that Shmuel said that it only applies to bishul, it doesn't apply to tzli. But also remember, we're going to define our terms. Bishul means the cooking with a liquid medium, as opposed to tzli, roasting, which is just with the fire. If it's bishul, then halacha l'maisa, again, that's where the flavor spreads. If it's tzli, so Shmuel said, kolef va'ochel. You can go ahead and literally peel back, eat the meat layer after layer until you get to the gid hanasha. To which the Gemara said, is that really true? What about the case of where they cooked the animal with the chaylev, and yet again they roasted the animal with the chaylev, and the entire animal became aser? To which the Gemara said, chaylev is different because chaylev mefafeya. The nature of chaylev is such is that it spreads throughout the animal. So the Gemara says, "V'bechaylev aser." Is that true that if you roast an animal without removing the chaylev, that the entire animal becomes aser? V'hamar Rabbi Bar Chana said, there was an episode that occurred with Rabbi Yochanan in the shul in Ma'on. I'll say, I don't know if it's the same Ma'on, but there is a Ma'on right outside of Chevron. A beautiful, I don't know, let's call it a town is maybe a little bit of an exaggeration, right? It's a beautiful little place. Again, I don't know if it's the same Ma'on as here, but maybe it is. In any event, so Rabbi Yochanan, so one time there was an episode in the shul in Ma'on, Bigdi shetzla'u bechalbo. We'll say what happened. They had a kid, right? A young lamb that they roasted, and they forgot to remove the chaylev. So they brought it up for Rabbi Yochanan to ask the Shaila, what's the status of the meat? Va'asu v'shailu Rabbi Yochanan. They asked Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan said, Va'amar kolif va'ochel ad shemagir lechalbo. And Rabbi Yochanan said, you could go ahead and literally again eat the layers of the meat until you get to the chaylev. Once you get to the chaylev, then just remove the chaylev and continue to eat. So what do you see from here? You see from here that apparently chaylev is not mifafeya, that apparently chaylev does not spread. Because again, halacha l'maisa, Rabbi Yochanan said that you could go ahead and you could just peel back the animal until you get to the chaylev. To which the Gemara answers, that's a different case. Hahu kachu shava. So apparently, again, I will say that was a weaker animal. So apparently, again, when we say that chaylev is mifafeya, that chaylev has the ability to spread through, to impart taste throughout the entire animal, I guess that's dealing with a stronger, more vital animal. But if the animal is weaker, if it's kachush, then the chaylev will not be mifafeya. That's answer one. Rav Huda Bar Yehuda Amar, Rav Huda already gives a different answer. He says it's dealing with a different kind of chaylev. Kulya bechel bahava v'sharia. In fact, again, I will say that was a case of we were dealing with the chaylev of the kidney. What's the difference with the chaylev of the kidney? Rashi says, Kulya bechel bahava v'sharia mishum demafsi karma. So I will say the way it works is that there is a membrane around the chaylev surrounding the kidney, and therefore, again, that membrane prevents the taste of the chaylev from permeating throughout the entire body of the animal. So I will say, so again, it was a unique chaylev situation of the chaylev of the kidney. Second answer. Third answer, Ravin Barav Ad Amar, Kilkilis Be'ilfis Hava. I will say, in fact, Ravin has a different interpretation. He says the case is actually not as we explained it before. The case that we're dealing with over here is what? Was the case of Kilkilis Be'ilfis, was the case of a small fish that got mixed into a pot. Look at Rashi. Rashi says, Kilkilis Sheket Dogim Kitanim. A small non-kosher fish that got mixed into a pot of meat. That was the case of Osei that they brought before Rabbi Yochanan in Ma'on. And what happens? V'asu v'shailuhu Rabbi Yochanan. So Osei, so what happened? So they came before Rabbi Yochanan. So Osei, so again, remember, the first two, so just understand the progression over here. The Gemara made a statement that roasting, under normal circumstances, if you roast, let's say, for example, the gid hanosha in the animal, so we don't have to worry about the taste of the gid permeating the animal, because we assume in that case, actually in a case of roasting, that the gid really contracts and therefore does not impart taste. Chaylev, on the other hand, if you roast it, will impart taste to the entire animal. So we'll say, so the Gemara, but yeah, we see a case that, or we see an episode that seems to contradict that. So we gave two answers so far. One possibility was it was a weak animal. Second possibility was that it's talking about that was the fat of the kidney, which is encased by a membrane, and therefore, again, the taste does not go ahead and disperse throughout the animal. The Gemara now, in its third answer, suggests that no. The case that came before Rabbi Yochanan was actually not a case of chaylev. It wasn't a case of chaylev. It was a different kashrus situation. What happened? Someone was cooking a pot of meat. Some non-kosher fish got mixed in. So I will say, what was the shayla they were bringing? What's the status of the meat now that you had the non-kosher fish mixed in? So what happens? Rabbi Yochanan said, when they brought him this food, Amrlo, lit'ame kfela arama. Rabbi said, this is amazing. So Rabbi Yochanan said, here's what we can do. Give it to a non-Jewish chef. Right? Give it to a Rashi says, lit'ame kfela, nachtum ovid kochavim. Go ahead and give it to a non-Jewish cook. Right? Give it to a non-Jewish. So we'll say, what are we looking for over here? What are we looking for? We're looking to see, did the non-kosher fish impart taste to the kosher meat or not? Obviously, I can't have a Jew taste this because, again, there might be non-kosher taste there. So what do? I give it to a non-kosher cook. Obviously, I want someone with a little bit of a more refined palate who could be able to see if the fish taste permeated the meat. So give it to a non-Jewish cook. Kfela aramo. So the Gemara says, so we'll say, finish that Rashi. Litame kfela, nachtum ovid kochavim. Nachtum, we'll say, literally means a baker. But in this context, it means give it to a non-kosher cook. So we'll say, so there's an incredible novelty here. Va'ashmo'inon, the mutar lismuch alav lefi tumo. So we'll say, this is amazing. So now what you see over here, we'll say, this is actually quite interesting. You are permitted to rely on the judgment of a Gentile for my halachic purposes. So we'll say, so remember again, what are we doing over here? I am relying on this non-Jewish cook for the sake, ultimately, again, of determining whether or not something is kosher. Now Rashi points out that this only works lefi tumo. We'll say lefi tumo means what? Of his own volition, right? Of his own volition, meaning, v'lo yodi'uhu shetzrichen lo l'davar iser v'heter. I will say it is very, 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 this only works if the Gentile does not know that he's essentially the posek over here, right? In other words, he cannot know that the Jew has a halachic issue that's going on over here, because otherwise, again, as we'll see, some of his potential credibility is compromised. So as I said, I could rely on a non-Jew to teach me, or to tell me, whether or not there is a taste influence in this mixture. But again, Rashi HaKadosh points out it must be Masiach Lefi Tumo. It must be that he's giving this information of his own volition and does not understand that I am relying on him for halachic purposes. We'll say the underlying concern over here is that if the Gentile knows that I am relying on him for my halachic purposes, there may be a desire to mislead me. Again, we'll get into that. We'll get into the logic of this a bit more. So the Gemara says, Amar Rava. So Rava says, so this, by the way, just introduced to us an incredible novel idea. So Amar Rava said, Mereish hava kakasheli hadisanya. So Rava said in the beginning, I didn't understand the following brayso. Kediru shebishal babasar, lo yivashal b'chalav. So we'll say if you have a pot, again we're going to learn all these halachas. If you have a pot and you cooked basar in it, you cooked meat in it, you should not cook milk in it. Vim bishal b'nosein tam. And I will say, let's say you did. Say if you did, ultimately, again, what we do is we look at nesinas tam. Suppose I say again, this comes up all the time, right? So I go ahead, I have a milchik spot, I end up cooking fleishiks in it, so I have to try to figure out, we assume that pots, right, utensils absorb. So we'll say, so the shaila is, did the absorptions in my milchik spot somehow influence the fleishik food which was cooked there? Then bishal say tam. So similarly again, so we'll say, so now obviously, we'll say, so what Rose is going to say is, I always wondered to myself, that's very interesting, but how do you ever really know? How do you know if there's nesinas tam or not? Similarly, truma. We'll say if you have a truma pot, every self-respecting Kohen has a truma pot. So if you have a truma pot, lo yivashel b'chulin. So we'll say if you have a truma pot, you really should not cook chulin in there. Now we'll say, now that's going to be true really for everyone, but all the more so, again, if I'm a Yisrael borrowing the pot from a Kohen, I might have problems if I use his truma pot and there are truma absorptions. Vim bishel b'nosein tam. And ultimately, again, if you did cook chulin in a truma pot, it could be potentially problematic if what? If halacha l'maaseh there's a taste infusion of truma into my chulin. So says the Gemara, truma lo yivashel b'chulin, v'im bishal b'nosein tam. So bishlam a truma, toim l'kohen. So we'll say, so I understand. So we'll say, let's start with case number 2. Case number 2 is I have a truma pot. I go ahead and I didn't mean to, but I accidentally cook chulin in there. Now, what's my shaila? My shaila is, did the taste of my truma impact my chulin? How do I know? How could I tell? So we'll say that's easier. How could I tell? I ask a kohen. Because a kohen is good regardless, right? Whether it tastes like with truma or chulin, no matter what, a kohen is permitted to eat it. So if I have that mixture, no problem. I ask a kohen to taste it. However, elabasa b'chalav man toimle. But I both say, if I have a basar b'chalav shaila, who's tasting that? You know, you're not so from. You're not so from. You come here, right? You taste that. I say, wait, who's tasting that for me? Who's determining whether or not there's nesinas tam ultimately again in my fleishik or my milchik's food? But says Rava, hashta da amar Rabbi Yochanan samchinan akfela arama. So says Rava, but now that Rabbi Yochanan said, that's what? That I could rely on a non-Jewish cook, right, who we're assuming has a bit more of a sensitive palate, that opens a whole new world of possibilities for me. So suddenly, again, halacha l'maisa, I can go ahead and ask this non-Jew to go ahead and taste my food and ask him, do you any hints of dairy in there, any hints of milk in there? Now again, I have Rashi's qualification that it has to be masiach lefi tumo, right? It has to be of his own volition. He can't know that ultimately, again, I am relying on him for any type of halach. Just however you frame those circumstances, halacha l'maisa, the novel idea is that what? Is that I can rely on the tasting of a non-Jew in order to go ahead and ascertain whether or not my food is kosher. Now, Tosas points out something very interesting. If you look at Tosas, samchina nakfela. So we'll say, so listen to this. Samchina nakfela. Afagav dovi kochavimhu. Now, we'll say, now understand something. In general, so understand the incredible, overwhelming chiddush that's happening over here. I am relying on an akum. So you'll say, remember again, this halacha applies to any non-Jew, right? It applies to it could apply to a ben Noach, it could apply to an akum. So of course, the most incredible chiddush is that I'm going to rely on an akum. I'm going to rely on literally an idolater to go ahead and determine whether or not my food is kosher. So says Tosas, how exactly does this work? So to focus on this. Rashi said it's masiach lefitumo. This is why you have to make sure that he knows that you're not, or you have to somehow indicate that you're not relying on his decision. Somehow, some way you have to frame it in a way that the information is just coming from him voluntarily, on his own volition. So Tosfos says something different. Because he is, see, remember again, this usage of an akum is not just by stam, any guy. Who am I using? Who am I using? A professional, a chef. So it says Tosfos, hulo meshaker. A chef is not going to lie. Why? Shelo yafsid umnaso. So it says uman lo mara umnaso. If someone is a chef, so we'll say a chef's entire credibility and his entire reputation is based on what? Is based on his knowledge of food, right? If you're a chef, but the only thing that's not so, my sense of taste is not so great. So I'll say you're going to have some problems making a career for yourself. So it says Tosfos, Dafka, we're relying on a professional here. So if you bring these two things together, Rashi's saying, I utilize him in a way where he doesn't realize that I am relying on him for a halachic decision. And Tosfos says, even if he's an akum, I could rely on him because at the end of the day, uman lomara umnaso. A professional is not going to want to compromise his professional standing. And therefore, again, because his work is food, he values his ability to sense nuanced taste in a very real way. That's part of his gestalt, that's part of his identity, that's part of his professional life. Therefore, again, I could rely on his integrity and being honest in telling me whether or not there's a taste infusion. Incredible halacha. Dama Rava. Now, I will say, by the way, this concept of uman lamara umnase, that a professional would not want to compromise his professional credibility, we're going to see a pleasant other areas of halacha as well. So the Gemara says, Dama Rava. Rava says, Amar Rabbanan b'taima, ve'amar Rabbanan b'kfela. So Rava says something very interesting. Sometimes the rabbis explain that when you have an issue of mixtures, you could determine the identity of the mixture through tasting it, and sometimes you could rely on the tasting of a Gentile. Which was a Rava saying sometimes when I have a questionable mixture, I could determine the status by tasting it myself, and sometimes I could only determine the status by relying on the Gentile, Amud Beis. So the Gemara said, V'amar Rabbanan b'shishim. And sometimes, Rabbi says now being introduced to something else, as sometimes the rabbis say that I don't rely on my own tasting, I don't rely on a Gentile, but instead I rely on a ratio of shishim, 60 to 1. Okay, we're going to discuss all of these. Here we go, Bosai. So Bosai says this is amazing because here the Gemara is kind of going to put forward a number of different incredible cases, although we're not going to go into them now, but this is going to serve kind of as the fundamental foundation for the coming discussions. Here we go. Hilchach. This is very exciting. Hilchach. Min b'she'eno mino dehatera. So we'll say we're going to analyze these cases very, very carefully. Min b'she'eno mino dehatera. So we'll say, so this means, min b'she'eno, we're going to see that in halacha there are two different types of mixtures. There's min b'mino, min b'she'eno mino. Min b'mino means two like items. Kosher meat, non-kosher meat, right? Two like items. Min b'she'eno mino means two dissimilar items. So here we go. Hilchach, min b'she'eno mino dehatera. So we'll say, if I have a min b'she'eno mino, two dissimilar items mixed together, and both are mutter, so what's the halacha? B'taima. So we'll say, what's the halacha with that? The halacha is, I taste it. So we'll say, what's a good example of min b'mino, right? Min b'mino dehatera. Could even be like Chullin and Truma. That could also be a case of min b'mino, right? For a Kohen, they're both heter. So what do you do about if you have min b'mino mixed together, Chullin and Truma? You want to know if there's a taste. Min b'she'eno mino, Chullin and Truma. You want to know if there's a taste infusion. What do? Kohen can taste it. Kohen tastes it, and all is good. Di'isura. We'll say if I have a min b'she'eno mino di'isura, so I have two dissimilar items mixed together, but the problem is one of them is aser. So obviously the Jew can't taste it. So what do I do in that circumstance? Bikfela. The Rabbi say I rely on a Gentile professional to go ahead and do the tasting for me. Umin b'mino. Rabbi say, what about a mixture of two similar items? Remember again. So I'll say when you have a mixture of two similar items, then deleka lemekam ataima. So we'll say in that case, remember again, if I have two similar items, or two of the same item, one being mutter, one being aser, Obviously, taste is not going to help me. Why won't taste help me? Right? Same item. Rabbi says a simple case: kosher meat and non-kosher meat. Bepashtos, the same cut. Right? The meat tastes the same. So how am I going to be able to tell if there's a taste infusion of the non-kosher meat into the kosher meat? Inami min b'she'eno mino di isura deleka kfela. Or Rabbi say, for that matter, even if I have a case of min b'she'eno mino, two dissimilar items, where what? Normally I would go ahead and rely on the tasting of a kfela, but let's say I'm going to have no kfela. So what do I do in that case? B'shishim. In that case, I will say I rely on bittul b'shishim, which we're going to get into the mechanics of that in a little bit. So I will say, this is actually pretty amazing. So therefore the Gemara says, min b'she'eno mino dehetera, two dissimilar items, but both are mutter like truma and chulin, taima. You have the Kohen taste it. Di isura min b'she'eno mino of iser kfela. Min b'mino, right? So two similar items where I can't rely on taste, or even if it's min b'she'eno mino di isura, but there is no kfela available. In that case, ultimately, again, we will use shishim. We'll use shishim. We'll use the concept of Rabbi ultimately, again, negating something in a mixture where there is a 60-to-1 ratio. So Rashi points out over here. Actually, good. We'll say weiter. Next case. So we'll say that. By the way, those principles are going to become very important, and we're going to go back and analyze them one by one. So another case. Hano amtasa deimlichu bereish kalusa begida nasha. Well, it's another very interesting case. It's very, very exciting. So let's say so there's a thigh, right? A thigh of an animal, and they accidentally left the gid hanosha inside of the thigh. Now, what did they do to the thigh? They salted it. So they salted the thigh with the gid hanosha inside of it. So as I say, now what's the shaila? The shaila is, what does the salting of the thigh with the gid hanosha inside of it do to the rest of the meat of the thigh? So Ravina aser. Ravina said ultimately again the meat is going to be aser. Ravacha baravashi shari. And Ravacha baravashi said that it was mutter. So let's analyze this. Asu shailuha lemar baravashi. They went to ask Mar Baravashi. Amar lahu abba shari. So they went to ask Mar Baravashi, and he said, my father, Ravashi, went ahead and said that such a situation was mutter. Amar le Ravacha bar Ravina. Amar le Ravacha bar Rav l'Ravina. My daitech. So therefore, Ravacha went back to Ravina and said, Ravina, why do you say that it's aser? Why do you say that if you salted the thigh with the gid hanosh inside of it that it should be aser? My daitech. The Amar Shmuel. It must be because Shmuel says Maliach hu karihu kiroseach kavush. So we'll say, watch this. Again, more concepts. Now, the Gemara is throwing a whole bunch of exciting new information, at us. So we'll say, which we're going to analyze again as the sugya unfolds. Shmuel said the following: Maliachu krozech. The Rabbi says we're going to see salting an item creates almost like a quasi-cooking scenario, right? So literally translated, maliach, when you salt something, and this is talking about heavy salting. Harihu krosech. And I will say, roseach literally means what? Roseach literally means heated up, boiled, hot, right? So what that means and what type of cooking process we are comparing salting to still requires further examination. But maliach harehu kiroseach. When you salt something heavily, it's as if what? It's as if it's been heated up. Kavush harehu kamavusha. So let's say, what does this mean? Kavush literally means pickling. But as we're going to see, what it also means is soaking. When you soak something for an extended period of time, that creates a bishul-like situation. So we'll say, so watch this. So remember again. So this is Rav Acha bar Rav is saying to Ravina, Ravina, you said that when you salt the piece of meat and the gid hanosha is on the inside, still there. So ultimately, the presence of the gid hanosha essentially asers the meat. Why? So Ravina, what's your logic? Is it because Shmuel said maliach kiroseach? That salting something is like cooking. He's like cooking in it, right? And therefore, again, it's as if you're cooking the gid hadasha inside of the thigh, and that's why it will be aser. V'amar Shmuel, but Shmuel himself said, Lo shanu elishin is bashalba. So Shmuel said that what? When is this true? Ultimately, that if you cook the gid hanasha inside of the thigh, then what? then the entire thigh becomes asar. That's only with his bishul. We'll say, what does bishul refer to? Bishul refers to cooking with what? With what? With a liquid medium. Aval mitzlaba. But if you roast the piece, the thigh, with the gid hanasha inside, then what? Kolef va'ochel atshemagia legid. What's the halacha rabosai? You could continue. You could eat the gid, right? You could eat the thigh, and you just peel away the layers of meat until you get to the gid. Once you get to the gid, throw away the gid. But the idea is that the taste of the gid, does not permeate the meat at all. The chitema. So remember again, I will say this is all leading up. So v'chitema, my kiroseach, dika amar, kiroseach dimavushal. So maybe he'll say, when Shmuel said maliach kiroseach, so we'll say, what does that mean? Like we just said before, roseach just means boiling or heating up. So here's what we know what Shmuel is saying about. So Shmuel is telling me that when you salt something, salting something is like cooking it. Heavily salting is like cooking it. We'll say, what's going to be the shayla? The shayla is, what form of cooking does it represent? So maybe you're going to say that if you salt something heavily, it's as if you're mavashal it. It's like bishul. It's like bishul. Oh, if it's like bishul, now I understand why Ravina said that what? That halacha l'maisa, if you salt the thigh and the gid is still inside of it, maliach kiroseach, roseach means bishul, and therefore again the thigh becomes aser. 1 second. V'hami deka'amar kavush haryukim avushal. But 1 second. What was the second part of Shmuel's statement? Shmuel said that kavush, which means soaking something, right? Soaking something for an extended period of time is like bishul. So we'll say in that second statement, Shmuel explicitly uses what word? What word? Bishul. He uses that word bishul. So we'll say the fact that Shmuel says kavushu kimavush. Remember again, he doesn't say what? What doesn't he say? He doesn't say maliach harihu kimavushal, but rather what does he say? Maliach harihu kiroseach. If Shmuel really wanted to say that when you salt something heavily, it's as if it's like there's bishul, then he should have used that lashon. The fact that he uses lashon like kavush kimavushal, but doesn't say roseach kimavushal michlal. Diroseach ditzlika amar. Then I could infer from the words of Shmuel that it is true. Heavy salting is like a cooking process. But what type of cooking process? Like roasting and not like bishul. If that's the case, then when you go ahead and you salt the thigh and you left the gid in there, so it's true. It's not good and it's as if there's been a cooking process. But what kind of cooking process? Tzli, roasting. They will say, what's the halacha if you roast the thigh of the animal with the gid inside of it? Kolef va'ochel atshemagia legid. The taste of the gid does not permeate the thigh in its entirety, and therefore halacha l'maisa, you can eat the layers of meat until you get to the gid, take out the gid, discard the gid, and continue to eat. To which the Gemara says kasha. You know what? That is a good kasha on the shita of Ravina. Indeed, again, we're not exactly sure. So we'll say, so for our purposes, we'll have to see what exactly we do with the gid under these circumstances. But I will say, but what I will point out to you is something amazing, is that the Gemara just introduced us. If you notice, by the way, today, and this is kind of going to be the impact of today's daf, is we are going to go ahead and get exposed to a number of fundamental yesodistic concepts in the halachos of kashrus. So we just saw the concept of ti'imas kfela, the Gentile ability to do the taste test, bittul b'shishim, min b'mino, min b'she'eno mino. Now, so we got into the concept of maliach kiroseach, heavily salting something is as if you're roasting it, kavush, harehu kumavushal, soaking something for an extended period of time, it's as if you're cooking it. So we'll say, these are all incredibly yesodistic ideas, which we're going to expound on. Simar goes by Tamar Chanina. Here we go. We'll say this is another incredible idea. Rabbi Chanina says, Kishay Misharin. So we'll say, in general, when we are going ahead, so now we're jumping back for just a moment. So we were introduced to the concept of shishim. Right? We call it bittul b'shishim, which means that if you have a mixture, now both say, remember again, where did the Gemara use shishim? The Gemara used it really in a case of min b'mino, right? So by min b'mino, or min b'she'eno mino, where there's no kfela. So, but right, say you have two like items or two dissimilar items, and one of them is asur, and there's no Gentile to be able to taste it. So, what are we relying on? Shishim. So I'll say, so but Pashas, what does that mean, shishim? So again, that means that if it sounds like if you have 60 permitted parts to your one prohibited part, then ultimately again the prohibited part is batal. Is negated in the mixture. So here we go. Amar Bichanina. Kishay Misharon, I will say, when you are measuring, bittul b'shishim, and you're trying to go ahead and figure out what comprises the 60 parts of heter, Misharin, berotov, ubekifa, ubechatichos, ubekedera. We'll say this is amazing. So we'll say, so what's the halacha? So comes along Rabbi Chanina and says that when you measure the shishim to figure out if you have 60 parts permitted, so we'll say what goes into the measurement of the 60? Pretty much what? Everything, right? The rotav is the gravy. We'll say the kifa, Rashi points out over here, he gives a French word, pundarila, dak shalbasa v'tavana misase b'shula gedera. We'll say it's like the food sediment that gathers at the bottom of the pot. So the gravy, which is the liquid, the food sediment which gathers at the bottom of the pot, bichatichos, the actual pieces of food, ubikdera. Now this is incredible. And with the pot itself. What does that mean? So we'll say, so some say ultimately again it means with the pot itself. So we'll say, so we'll see what that means in just a moment. The ikeda amri b'may debala kedera. And others explain that what it refers to is that which the pot absorbed. See, say any time that you cook in a pot, the assumption is that the pot absorbs something. So what the Gemara is suggesting over here is that halacha l'maisa, when going ahead and figuring out the 60 parts permitted to the one part prohibited, what's included in that calculation is whatever was already absorbed by the pot. So in calculating shishim, everything goes into that calculation. The food, the gravy, the pieces, the sediment, and that which has been absorbed by the pot. Am Rabbi Abba, Rabbi Yochanan, Kol Yisurin Shebetorah. Shabbos says, just by the way, so that statement in and of itself is actually quite amazing if you think about it. Shabbos says, so now what is that saying? That literally when calculating shishim, I have to go ahead and figure out what the pot absorbs. Shabbos say, well, we'll see how the Shulchan Aruch paskins. And actually, let me tell you this now. Shabbos, now wait. So it says, I'm Rabbi Abba, I'm Rabbi Yochanan. So we'll go a little bit weiter. There's a lot of halacha to do. So just keep that in mind, by the way, because that's going to be an incredibly important idea, as do I have to take into account what has been absorbed by the pot already in the calculation of shishim. Hold on to that. I'm Rabbi Avo, I'm Rabbi Yochanan. Kol Yisurin Shebetorah, Misharin Ki'ilu Hein Batzal V'Kaflot. So what's another interesting idea? So Rabbi Yochanan says, whenever it comes to an Isra in the Torah, we'll say when trying to figure out whether or not the item went ahead and conveyed taste or not, we look at the usr item as if it is an onion or a leek. So we'll say, so what does this mean? So we'll say what Rabbi Yochanan is suggesting, Rabbi Yochanan is suggesting over here, is that in general, when looking to see if a davar ha'asr conveyed taste, we look at the davar ha'asr as having exceptionally sharp or strong taste. So like an onion or a leek are very strong food items that convey taste easily. Rabbi Yochanan is therefore suggesting that whenever we have a mixture of kosher and non-kosher items, and you want to see if the non-kosher item conveyed taste, you don't look at the non-kosher item for what it is, but you look at it as if it were a leek or an onion. If it were a leek or an onion, would it convey taste in this ratio? So says Rabbi Abba to Abaye, but if that's the case, why not go ahead and look at it as even a sharper food item? Papal and Abba like peppers or other forms of spices which are even stronger than onions or leeks, that even in a ratio of 1,000 to 1, you can still taste them. It's a bit hyperbolic, but it's trying to make a point. Amrale shi'aru chachamim de nosin tam beisurin yoserin basal akafla. So we'll say apparently onions and leeks are the type of items that when mixed in with other foods have the ability to convey taste in a stronger fashion than most other food items. So we'll say, so this, by the way, is an incredibly machmir position, which we don't really accept la halacha. but it's very dramatic. What it's saying is that when determining whether or not there's been a taste infusion, essentially you always look at the non-kosher item as if it's a sharp item. If this were an onion, would it convey flavor in this ratio? Now, obviously, an onion will continue to convey flavor even when it's vastly outnumbered by the other permitted items. So this is an incredible chumrah by tarobas which we do not accept. Amr Rav Nachman, gid b'shishim ve'in gid min aminyan. So we'll say getting a little bit into the halachos of bittul b'shishim. So we'll say gid hanasha is batel in a ratio of 60-1. So let's say I have a mixture of gidin, right? The mixture, right? And most of them are permitted. And I have a gid hanasha that falls in there. As long as there are 60 permitted gidim, right? Halacha l'maisa, the gid will be mutter. Rabbi say, but very important, ve'in hagid min haminyan. But the gid hanasha does not count as part of the minyan. Which Rabbi say means what? That halacha l'maisa, I need 60 other. In other words, what do I have to have in this pot? What do I have to have in this pot? 61 gidin, right? 60 permitted ones, ultimately, again, to the one non-kosher gid hanasha. Look at Rashi, first white line in Rashi, ve'in gid min haminyan, Rashi says, I need 60 permitted gidin in addition to the prohibited gid hanasha. So fine. So next case. So here we're kachol b'shishim, the kachol min haminyan. So this is an interesting case. An udder. Let's say the udder gets mixed in. And the problem with the udder, of course, is what? Is that there's a concern that there's milk inside of it. So remember, again, if you cook an udder in a pot of meat, there's a concern ultimately again that you have a basar b'chalav issue. So we'll say, so if I have the udder, so kachol b'shishim, so to an udder is going to be batal b'shishim, but kachol min haminyan. But interestingly, the Gemara is suggesting that the udder itself can be part of the 60, because we'll say we're going to something very interesting over here. The udder itself is not problematic. What's problematic is what? Is the milk that is inside of the udder. So therefore, again, the udder itself can become part of the ratio of the shishim that is permitted. Look at Rashi. I'll say it's that same Rashi. Rashi says over here, ve'en gid min haminyan, is the Rashi, aval kachol hoil umin heterhu. We'll say the kachol itself, the udder, is a permitted item. I mean, you're allowed to eat the udder of the animal, provided that you get rid of the milk. In this bashal ma'basar misharin le'beshishon le'bahadidis. So this is actually very interesting. So the git, so we'll say what the Gemara is making a distinction of here is between items which are inherently prohibited versus items which are inherently permitted. So for example, the gid hanasha is inherently prohibited. Therefore, in order to be batel in a mixture, what has to happen? You have to have 60 permitted gidim corresponding to the one which is asr. In the case of the kachar, in the case of the udder itself is inherently permitted. Therefore, the udder combines ultimately with what? With the other permitted items to go ahead and form shishim against the milk that is included inside of the udder. The Gemara goes weiter. Beitza b'shishim ve'im beitza min haminyan. Similarly, again, now we're assuming over here that what kind of beitza we're talking about. Rashi says we're assuming this is the egg of a non-kosher bird. So the egg of a non-kosher bird ultimately, again, also requires, if it gets mixed in with other eggs, it will halacha l'maisa require a ratio of 60-1, and the non-kosher egg, of course, is not included in the 6. You have to have 60 other eggs besides that one. Am Rabbi Yitzchak ben Misharshia, the kachal atzmo aser. So what Rabbi Yitzchak ben Misharshia says, no, the udder itself is actually going to be aser. So we'll say now it comes along on Misharshia, and he argues what we just said before. We said before that the udder itself could be permitted. Rabbi Misharshia is coming along and saying no, the udder itself becomes prohibited. Why does the udder become prohibited? Look at Rashi. Kachal atzma aser. Shari abasar nasan botam. V'hulo nasan tam babasar fishim muad. So let's listen to this. So the Gemara says, V'i nafal l'kedera acheres. And if that udder falls into another pot, oser, it actually has the ability to become aser. I will say, now bepashtos, the reason why the udder is going to become aser is why? Is because the mice, again, it was cooked with the chalav inside of it. If it becomes cooked with the chalav inside of it, we're going to see it becomes aser. To the point that even if you take that udder out and you put it in another pot, that udder has the ability to aser the contents of a different pot. Amar Rav Ashi, ki avina beRav Kana. So Rav Ashi, when I was in the house of Rav Kana, Bailon, ki misharinon, bididei misharinon, ubamai dinafik mini misharinon. I will say, when we go ahead and when we're trying to figure out the ratio of bittul for the udder, so how do we look at it? Do we need shishim corresponding to the entire udder, or is it just shishim corresponding to the milk which would come out of the udder? To which the Gemara says, Pshita tebedidei misharinan. I will say it appears to be clear that when determining shishim, we go ahead and what? We need 60 corresponding to the entire udder. Why? Because we'll say if we're going to start saying that I only need 60 corresponding to the amount of milk that comes out of the udder, then I have a simple fundamental question, which is, how would I know? How do I know what's coming out of the udder or not? Ella, so we'll say, but ultimately, if that's the case, then I will say, then why is it that halacha l'maisa, if that udder falls into another pot after bittul, why should it aser anything else? Kevan d'amrav Yitzchak beit Rameshashia v'kachal atzmo aser shavye rabbanon kechaticha dinavela. I will say, to which the Gemara reaches a very interesting conclusion. That at the end of the day, I will say, an udder which has not been properly cleaned out of its milk, halacha l'maisa has the status of nevela. So ultimately, again, and because it has the status of nevela, therefore what? Therefore, halacha l'maisa, even if it gets mixed in with another pot of food, will ultimately be a prohibited item in that new pot of food as well. So I'll say it's actually quite amazing. So it turns out that the udder itself, which is technically kosher, if, however, again, it still retains the milk inside of it and it's cooked with that milk inside of it, it becomes treated in halacha like a chaticha dinavela. And now we understand that's why also what? That's why also when determining how much other meat you will need to be mevatel that kachol, it's not just going to be shishim corresponding to the milk inside of the udder, but rather it's going to be 60, it's going to be shishim corresponding to the entire size of the udder itself. I will say, I'll just end off with one piece of interesting halacha. What about what we said before in terms of determining shishim? Right? Remember again, the Gemara said before that when determining shishim, you have to take into account the food, the gravy, the sediment, and the Gemara actually said the kedir itself, the pot itself as well. So the Shulchan Aruch says something very interesting. The Shulchan Aruch says, however, he says, "V'hani mi va'isur kamo shabbal lefanenu afa pishai beheto yosem eleve v'nisab b'shulo v'nivlo b'kedera." So we'll say, so the halacha is masharim berotov u'bekiva b'chatichov mashar meheto va'isur kamo shabbal lefanenu. So we'll say Shulchan Aruch paskins. This is in Siman Sadik Test 99 in Yardei Sif Dalid. So the Shulchan Aruch says when determining shishim, we go ahead and we take into account the gravy, the sediment, chatichos, u'misharim haheter va'iser kemoshe ba lefanenu. The Shulchan Aruch paskins are both saying that when we gauge shishim based on what? Based on how the food looks right now. We do not try to determine shishim based on what the food was when it was first introduced into the pot, which is another way of saying what? We determine shishim based on the way it looks now. We do not get involved in what got absorbed, what evaporated, or any way. We based our shishim based on the way the food looks now. And the commentaries on the Shulchan say very simply, why do you have to do with this, Rabbi Osai? Because otherwise, it's going to be virtually impossible to try to figure out shishim. If I'm going to have to start trying to figure out absorptions and everything else, too complicated. Instead, halacha l'maisa, when determining what shishim is, we look at the ratios of the food as they exist at the time that the shaila arises. All right, so we'll stop there for today.